Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making a mesh swimsuit cover-up top, and I will be making a tutorial for mesh cover-up shorts, but that will be coming out soon. First, I'm going to be using weight for acrylic yarn, a 5mm hook instead of a 4.25, and you definitely could use a 4.25 if you want to. I just want this to have like a looser fit, so a bigger hook is going to help with that. I also have scissors and a darning needle. So the actual stitches you use don't really matter. You could switch them up to literally any stitch that is in like the basic single crochet to double treble crochet, but you just kind of want to make a pattern of your own. You can like switch it up every row, you can keep it the same every row. I'm going to be switching it up, but there is going to be a pattern when I go back and forth. And for this pattern, we're essentially going to be making 2 panels, stitching them together, and then adding little short sleeves on the side. So while you could make your front and back panels different, I would recommend making them similar at least. First, we're going to start off with a slip knot, putting our hook in, and we're going to do a row of foundation half double crochets. So chain 2, yarning over, going into the side 2 loops of that first chain, pulling through those 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 1, and yarn over, pull through 3. And that is your first foundation half double crochet. So we're going to keep doing these foundation half double crochets until the panel reaches as wide as you want it to be. So we're not working from top to bottom right now, which would be length. We're doing it from side to side. So basically as wide as you want it to fit on the top. And depending on how you want it to fit, you could make it very close to how your actual measurements would be. But if you are wanting it to be a loose, more slouchy fit, I would definitely recommend making it wider than your actual measurements are, because otherwise it's going to fit very skin tight, which could be the look you're going for. But if you do want it to be slouchy, you're going to want it to be bigger than that. Once it has reached the width that you want it to be, you're going to measure it up, making sure to twist it a little bit around the sides, because when we're stitching it together, it is going to wrap around the side a little bit. It's not just going to be the front. At the end of this row, we're going to chain 2, turn our work, and we're going to do a double crochet into this first stitch. Then we're going to chain 2, skip 2 stitches from the previous row, and double crochet into the 3rd stitch. Then we're going to do it again, chaining 2, skipping 2, double crochet into the 3rd, and we're going to do this the entire row. And then at the end, we're going to chain 2 and double crochet into the chain. So we're not going to double crochet 2 stitches later, we're just going to do it at the very end. Doesn't matter if it's 3 stitches over. For the next row, we're going to chain 3, turn our work, and do a treble crochet into that first stitch. So yarning over twice, going through, pull through once, pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through 2. Then we're going to chain 2 and treble crochet into the double crochet from the previous row. And once again, repeating this the entire row, 2 chains between each of these treble crochets. At the end of the row, chaining 2 and doing a treble crochet, but this time we're going to go into the stitch, not into the chain. And there we go. For the next row, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and for this row we're going to be doing half double crochets. So half double crochet into the first stitch, 2 half double crochets into the gap, and 1 into the treble crochet. Repeating this the whole row. And at the end doing 1 half double crochet into the treble crochet from the previous row, and then this time we're going to chain 4. Turning our work, and then we're going to do a double treble crochet. So wrapping the yarn around our hook 3 times, going into that first stitch, pulling through, go through 2, go through 2, go through 2, and go through 2. Then we're chaining 2, skipping 2 stitches and double treble crocheting into the next. Then we're chaining 2, wrapping the yarn 3 times, and same thing, skipping 2 going into the third. And the easiest way to tell that you're skipping 2 is just matching it up with this stitch, because in this row you also skip 2 in that exact same spot. And we're going to repeat that the entire row. And for our last one, chaining 2, double treble crochet into that first half double crochet from the previous row. Next, we're going to repeat the second row, so chaining 2, turning our work, and doing a double crochet into the first stitch. Then we're going to chain 2, and double crochet into that double treble crochet from the previous row. And we're going to repeat this the entire row. And then at the end of the row, as usual, chaining 2 and doing our last stitch into the stitch from the previous row. Next, we're going to chain 2 again at the beginning of this row and do that same double crochet into the first stitch. Except this time we're going to do double crochets into the gap. So 2 double crochets into the gap, 1 into the double crochet, and repeating that. 2 into the gap, 1 into the double crochet. And then at the end of the row, doing a double crochet into that double crochet from the previous row. For our next row, we're going to reflect what we did here. So we're going to repeat all of these rows backwards, and then once we get to the end of that, if it's not long enough, we'll repeat it again. So for this next row, chaining 2, turning our work, and double crocheting into the first stitch, chaining 2, skipping 2 stitches and double crocheting into the third, chain 2, skip 2, double crochet, and repeating that the whole row. And in that last stitch, just like normal, chaining 2, double crochet. Now we're going to chain 4, turn our work, and double treble crochet into that first stitch, wrapping the yarn 3 times and making our double treble crochet. Then we're going to chain 2 and double treble crochet into the double crochet. And we're going to repeat this the entire row. And in our last stitch, doing our chain 2 and then our double treble crochet like so. Next we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we're going to half double crochet into the first stitch, 2 half double crochets into the gap, 1 into the next stitch, and 2 into the gap. So repeating this the whole row. Doing 2 half double crochets into our last gap and 1 into the stitch. Next we're going to chain 3, turn our work, and we're going to do a treble crochet. So wrapping the yarn around our hook twice and doing our treble crochet into that first stitch. Then we're going to chain 2, skip 2, and treble crochet. Repeating that the entire row. And here on the previous row, I only did 1 half double crochet into the gap, and so I have 1 less stitch than I need, but this is definitely a top where if you make a mistake, no one's really gonna notice because it's so slouchy and casual. So I'm just gonna do my chain 2 just like normal, but I'm going to only skip 1 stitch and I'm gonna go into that stitch right here. Normally I would be skipping 2 stitches right here and then still going into this one. But of course, if you didn't make a mistake, do it just like normal, skipping 2 stitches. and into the last stitch, doing our chain 2 and treble crocheting into that last stitch. Next, we're going to chain 2, turn our work, and doing a double crochet into the first stitch, chaining 2, skipping 2, and double crocheting, and repeating this the whole row. And into our last stitch, doing our chain 2 and double crocheting. For this next row, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and half double crochet into that first stitch, doing 2 half double crochets into the gap, and 1 into the stitch, repeating that the entire row. Doing that half double crochet into our last stitch to end off the row. Now we've reached the end of the pattern in terms of reflecting it once both ways, but I am going to add a little bit more length because it's just like kind of more cropped than I want it to be. But of course, at whatever row it reaches the length that you want it to be, you can end it off. It doesn't have to end off on a solid row or a mesh row. Literally doesn't matter, just whenever it reaches the length you want it to be, you can pause. And at that point, you'll just chain 1 and cut off your work in your corner. And if I end off my work before you do, just keep adding more rows until it reaches the length that you want it to be. So for this next row, I'm going to chain 2, turn my work, and start that pattern from the beginning again. So double crocheting into the first stitch, chaining 2, skipping 2 and double crocheting, and repeating that the whole row. Chain 2, skip 2, double crochet. Into last stitch, chaining 2 and double crochet. For the next row, we're going to chain 3, turn our work, treble crochet into that first stitch, chain 2, and treble crochet into the next stitch, chaining 2, and repeating that the whole row. Chaining 2 and treble crocheting into that last stitch at the very end. And now we're going to chain 2, turn our work, and I'm going to do double crochets for this row because we have 2 half double crochet rows here. Double crocheting into the first, 2 into the gap, and into the next stitch for the whole row. And at the end of the row, doing our last 2 double crochets and a double crochet into the last stitch. And that is the length that I'm going to make mine. So now I'm going to chain 1 and cut off my work, pulling it through and tightening it. And now I'm going to make one more exactly like this. So I would recommend when you make your second one, you do start with your foundation row here and work your way up, not going the other way, just because foundation rows are similar to the actual stitches, but they do look a little bit different. And in order to start your next row, you're also going to need to count how many stitches you have. So starting off with our foundation row, we're going to count all of them. So I have 55 stitches in my first row, and so I'm going to grab my yarn again, make a slip knot, put the yarn on my hook, and then I'm going to start with my 55 foundation half double crochets. Your number might be the same as mine, it might be different, but regardless, you're going to want to make the exact same number that you did on the other panel. Starting off, chaining 2 and doing our foundation half double crochet. Now I'm going to leave you off and repeat everything I just did. So if you need to watch it again, feel free, just skip back to the chapter that says row 1, and then otherwise I will join you back once I finish this panel and it's time to stitch them together and add the sleeves. Okay, I'm back. I just finished the second panel and I changed the angle a little bit so that you can see more because these are pretty big. But what you're gonna do now is take both your panels and find the side that matches. So this is my double crochet side and just lay it on top like this. So this next part kind of just depends on how you want yours to fit. So if you want the top of it to fit where the neck is kind of like a typical top where it's like close to actually where your neck is, then you're going to need to stitch the sides like I'll show you in a second. Either cut a really long piece of yarn and have that be the yarn you use for one side and then do your other side directly from the ball of the yarn so that you can do both of them at the same time, because the issue that can come up, which you won't really expect to happen, is that you do it too close together and you can't fit it over your head, because the way you stitch it together, it's not going to stretch this way for your head. It really only is going to be able to stretch like that way, and that doesn't give you that much room. So if you have it on both sides at the same time, you can keep trying it on and then be like, no, I can have it a little bit closer, do 3 more stitches on both sides, try it on again, and then it's like, yes, it's perfect, cut it off, whatever. Or you do those 3 extra stitches, you try it on, you literally can't get it over your head, and you're like, never mind, let me undo those 3 stitches and leave it where it was. Because what I don't want to happen is that you stitch it together on one side, stitch together on the other side, cut them both off, and then you try and put it on and it doesn't fit. Because that literally happened to me the other day, making something similar to this. So that is my one word of advice. However, if you're gonna do it the way I am, which is gonna be like slouchy off the shoulder, that doesn't really matter because you're gonna be doing it so wide that it's gonna fit over your head anyway. So what I'm gonna do is grab my corner and I'm gonna go through the top of the chain on the front loop and through the top of the chain on this back panel. Then I'm gonna grab the yarn and pull it through all of these loops. And then I'm gonna tie a double knot just to make sure it's actually secure. Now I'm gonna go through that same spot where the knot is and I'm gonna pull the yarn through. Now, you could go through all 4 loops, 2 on each panel, when you're doing these stitches, but I like to go on the outside loop on both of them. So it's gonna be the loop that's like away this way and the loop that's on this side, because then it just makes it a little bit more seam-like. But if that's too complicated to understand, you can just do it like this, where you go through both, and then make your stitch. So what I'm gonna do though is go through this outside loop and then go through the outside loop on the other side, pull through, and I'm going to make a single crochet. And then I'm going to do this 4 more times. Actually, I'm just going to do 4 total. After that last one, I'm going to go into the next stitch on the outside loops again. Except this time I'm going to make a slip stitch and chain one and pull through. Normally you'd have to cut off your work, but I messed this up, so I already have it cut. Just another reminder, if you're not making it off the shoulder, make sure that you are trying it on before you cut it off, because it really sucks having to undo it and then like reattach your yarn and do a magic knot to make your yarn longer and all that stuff. Now I'm going to turn it the other way, making sure I'm on the other corner to this side. I'm not going to be at the bottom corner, these should still be loose. And I'm going to repeat that same thing, going into that top corner, but since the side has a knot, I'm literally just going into that first stitch pretty much. Gonna pull it through, tie my double knot, and then go through and put the yarn on my hook. Then I'm going to go on my outside loops for 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to do a slip stitch into the next stitch, so outside loop, pulling through, and chain 1 and cut off my work. Now we actually do need to try it on for the next step. So you're just gonna like throw it over your head, and what you're gonna want to do, hopefully this angle like makes sense, is just find the point where you want it to end. So since it's gonna be like off the shoulder and slouchy, I'm gonna make it pretty far down. So I'm gonna choose this stitch. I'm just gonna keep holding on to that. When I take it off, close this up. And now that is where my sleeve is going to be. And so now, because I am going to be lazy and not go grab a stitch marker, I'm just gonna grab this pen that's like dead and hook it onto here so that I don't lose my spot. This is like so lazy. I just have to go like across the room to grab a stitch marker, but I'm like not willing to get up. So if you have your stitch marker, just do the same thing, putting it in the spot that you want your sleeve to be. But we're gonna do something very similar to what we did to stitch the top together. So just going through that corner, grabbing the yarn, and we're gonna tie it on. And again, I'm gonna do a double knot just to make sure it's secure. And then we're gonna pull it through, but this time, since we're not on the edge of the stitches like here where we have 2 loops on each side, we just have basically the sides of normal stitches. You're just gonna find 1 loop on both sides to go through and make your single crochet. The one thing that to be careful of is making sure it's still lined up. So you don't want to do like the side of this foundation half double crochet, but then on this side you're already in the double crochet. You want to make sure you're going into the same stitch on both sides, so matching it up. Here I'm on the side of the double crochet, and I'm going to do a second one in the side of the double crochet, making sure I'm still doing that on the other panel. I'm going to go in this middle area here and just repeating that all the way down. You can kind of follow the same thing as the number of chains you would do for the beginning of each stitch. So when you're doing double crochets, do 2 single crochets into the side here. If you have half double crochet or single crochet, you're doing 1 single crochet, etc. Or you can kind of just find a spot. It doesn't really matter, to be honest, just whatever works to make sure they fit together. And when you come to the point where there's chains, it is a little bit easier because you're just going into 1 loop of the chain on both sides. Okay, so now that I'm pretty much where my stitch marker is, I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to do 1 single crochet into this first one, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch into the second part. So wherever you are, you want to do 1 of the single crochets and then 1 slip stitch. Then you're going to chain 1 and cut off your work. And now we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So we're going to match up where the edge of this is, so I'm literally just gonna like run along here, and there we go. And that is where I'm gonna put my fake stitch marker. Now I'm gonna go into the bottom corner, pulling through, and then tying it on. And putting the yarn on my hook. Now we're going to repeat the same thing. It doesn't matter if on this side you did 1 stitch into the half double crochet and then on this side you do 2. All that matters is that you're doing the same thing on each panel. So for the half double crochet here, you should have the same thing on this side, but from this side to this side, it can be different. And now I'm pretty much where my fake stitch marker is, so I'm going to take it off. And going into my last few, doing my single crochets, and then my last one is going to be that slip stitch. Chaining 1, and then before you cut it off, just make sure that you're on the same stitch. And I am, so I can cut it off and pull it through. And so now you could definitely leave it like this and just have it be like a little vest thing, but I do want there to be a tiny bit of a sleeve, so I'm just gonna add like literally 2 rows to here. So what I'm gonna do is go into this first corner where I have it tied on, and I'm gonna switch to this ball of yarn because my other one is pretty much done. And I can tie on the yarn. Here I can just do a single knot because I'm only tying into one thing. I was doing a double knot earlier because we're going into 2 panels at once. Now I can put the yarn on my hook. I'm going to do a chain 2, and then I'm going to double crochet into that same spot, chain 2 again, and now is where again you can be a little bit like lax about where you're going because you're not going into like a clean spot. The only thing is that like you kind of want to pretend like you are, like you wouldn't want to chain 2 and then skip this entire thing because this is basically worth 4 chains. So I'm just going to go like into the middle of it with a double crochet. Then I'm going to chain 2 and go into this middle area here, chain 2, find another spot to go to, and keep doing that all the way around until I reach this point again. Now that we're at the end of the row, we're going to chain 2 and then slip stitch into the top of this chain here, like so. And if you are happy with how long the sleeve is, you can stop here, but I'm going to do another mesh row and then I'm going to do a solid row. So this time I'm going to chain 3, do my treble crochet into that first stitch, and now you have clear stitches to go into. So chaining 2, going into that double crochet from the previous row, you should be going into those exact same spots every time, not like finding a random spot, because now we are basically building like a regular row from this point. And so now we're at the end of the row. We're going to do our chain 2 and then slip stitching into the top of the beginning of this row. And now I'm going to chain 2 and I'm going to do double crochets for my solid stitches. So doing 1 into that first stitch, 2 into the gap, 1 into the stitch, 2 into the gap, and repeating this the whole row. And once again, if you are already happy with how long the sleeve is, you don't have to do this row. But after I finish this row, I am going to be done. If you want yours to be even longer, or even like, you could honestly make this like a literal sweater by just doing full sleeves. So if you want to keep going, you can just keep alternating between mesh rows and solid rows until it reaches the length you want. It's totally up to you how long you end up doing them. And feel free to try it on as you're going to make sure that like it's not too long or not too short, so you can keep adjusting it to where you want it. Now that we're at the end of the row, we're going to slip stitch into the top of the chain. And if you're done, chain 1 and cut off your work. If you're continuing, keep doing those rows. And so now that is one sleeve done, but we have to repeat it on the other side. The first thing we want to do is count how many mesh gaps we have in the first row. So we're gonna just choose a point to start from. So I have 17 gaps. The only reason you want to count this is because you want it to be even on the other side. And so while you don't have to be exact with where you're putting your stitches, if you end up with less than you have on the other side, you can just do like a mesh increase to make up for that. So we're going to go into this corner, tying on our yarn. We're going to chain 2, do our double crochet into that same spot, chain 2 again, and start doing these mesh stitches. So skipping a couple, chaining 2, skipping a couple more, and repeating that the whole row. So this is my 15th gap, and this next one will be my 16th, but don't worry that you're one short here and you only have a little bit of space, because this last chain 2 slip stitch is going to be your last gap. So this puts me at 17 where I need to be. Now that you've done your slip stitch, I'm going to chain 3 and start my treble crochet gap row. And remembering that for this row, you are going into stitches, you're not going into random spots anymore. And just do that the entire row. At the end of the row, you're going to do your last treble crochet, chain 2, and then slip stitch into that chain at the very top. Now I'm going to chain 2 and start my double crochet row. Doing 1 into each stitch and 2 into each gap. And now we're going to slip stitch into that top of the chain at the end of the row, chaining 1 and cutting off our work. So now we are done other than weaving in our ends. I'm going to show you one example of weaving in ends, and then I am going to do the rest later off camera after this video is finished. But if you need a more in-depth weaving your ends tutorial, you can check out my ultimate beginner tutorial because I show it in that one, and then I also show it in like my mesh halter top tutorial, my tank top tutorial, a few other ones. So what you're gonna want to do is take your darning needle, lay your yarn over it, pinch it and slide it off, and then you're gonna wiggle it through the gap. This just makes it a little bit easier to get the yarn through the gap there. Then you're just gonna weave through the stitches, changing directions as well. And then I kind of like to force it through the knot because that's just like a secure place for it to be. And then tighten it up and you can cut it off. What I recommend is to weave in all your ends and then turn it inside out, because then your seams will be on the inside instead of like sticking out. Like here, there's a little bit of like a bump where the single crochets are, whereas on the other side, it's gonna be like flat like that. But yeah, we are all done. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions down below. I will do my best to help. If you make one of these, please make sure to tag me wherever you post it because I would love to see it. And once enough people have tagged me, I will make a post spotlighting everyone, showing off your amazing creations. But otherwise, yeah, thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time. Bye. And we're going to repeat this the entire row. And we're going to repeat this the entire row.